The next speaker,
Yes.
Mathis Grapotte. If you can start activating your camera and sharing your screen.
Hello.
Great, perfect. So that's the turn of Mathis Grapotte from Sanofi and IGMM from Montpellier, presenting us discovery of widespread transcription initiation at microsatellites predictable by sequence-based NIP neural networks. The scene is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about transcription, microsatellites, and deep learning. So just to start and give you a brief introduction on microsatellites. Microsatellites are also called short random repeats or STRs. And basically it's just a simple element. So in this case, a T, but it can be several base pairs long, that is repeated certain amount of times, right? And we have few terminologies. So we are going to call the STR class the element that is repeated. So in this case, T or AC. And then we are going to call the length, the number of repetitions. And finally, we are going to call flanking sequences, sequences that are on both sides of the short random repeat. So just keep that in mind. And with that, I'm going to begin with the beginning of the story. So in 2014, the International Consortium Phantom published a expression atlas in different mammals. And they did that by using the CAGE technology for cap analysis of gene expression. So what is it? Is a sequencing from the 5' end of the capped RNA. And then that read is 27 nucleotides long and is mapped onto the genome. So this is important because it means that you have a tag, which measure expression, and a location. The CAGE method was applied genome-wide in about 1,000 experiments in human across multiple tissues, also applied in other mammals. And it has two key strengths, which is it is precise and it is also strength specific. So when we got our hand on that catalog, we found out that roughly 72% of the CAGE peaks detected by Phantom, they are unassigned to promoters and enhancers. And also, from all of these CAGE peaks, a significant fraction of those were the initiated STRs or short random repeats. You have here an example of how that a large fraction of them initiated short random repeats. To dig deeper in that, and we found out that at the STRs of each class, we saw that, well, some classes have much more elements than others, much more CAGE than others. And we saw that the distribution of CAGE peaks within class on the right basically doesn't match with the number of STRs that each class has. And what that tells us is that the CAGE peak distribution is not random, right? And some classes have bigger amount of CAGE than expected. And with that in mind, we started to see that, well, there's something at play here. There's something at STR class that's not random, but this is not enough to validate the discovery of transcription at short random repeats. And the reason for that is a mapping problem, and to solve that mapping problem, we developed a new tag metric, which is basically we instead of considering only one value, so there is a peak or there is no peaks, we considered a nominal stack count. So we just take the signal over the STR and plus or minus 5 base pairs, and we divide by the STR length. And what we see is that, as before, we see the same kind of conclusion where we have a distribution that is different based on the classes. And this is relevant because instead of having in the thousands or the tens of thousands of examples in the K-Peaks catalog, well, we have millions of sequences and millions of examples, because we can then not choose only the peaks as they are detected by Phantom, but we can take the brute cage signal. And something that's also interesting to note is that, well, the correlation, Pearson correlation of that signal between human and mouse orthologs is 0.87. So that transcription seems to be conserved between human and mouse. Well, so then now we have a signal that is a bit more robust because we have much more examples, but it is still not enough to affirm that we have a transcription initiation at short tandem repeats. And that brings us to our mapping problem. Well, if you remember, the cap trapping, the cap trapping and the ELIScope sequencing, the cage technology, it takes only 27 nucleotides. And if you have a short tandem repeats, which are mainly repeats, it is difficult to map them onto the genome because they could go anywhere. For that reason, the Phantom Consortium developed during the course of this study a method called cap tracking sequencing, CTR-seq, that uses both the cap trapping of cage, but also a mean-ion sequencing. That sequences not only 27 nucleotides, but 500. In this case, you are going to have reads much longer, so these reads are going to be easier to map onto the genome. And what we see with that is that if we compare from the previous example with the K-Peaks fractions in STR classes from ELIScope and mean-ion sequencing, well, we see very similar distributions, right? So with ELIScope, we have this distribution, and the thing that is important to note is the scale here, which is 10 times bigger than the scale which is here, but this is mostly due to the depth of sequencing. So, and then you have a Pearson correlation between both distributions of 0.88. So this validates transcription at short tandem repeats because we have overcome our mapping problem, and we by using mean-ion sequencing instead of ELIScope sequencing. So in the study, once we had these two components, the validation of the quality of the ELIScope sequencing by mean-ion, and the continuous signal for all the sequence, and the 3 million examples instead of the tens of thousands available in the cage database. Well, we could use that signal. What was the use of transcription at short tandem repeats? And for that, we developed a deep neural network to see if we could predict the transcription in the continuous value of transcription at each sequence. And if we could, that would mean that there is some motifs and elements at the short tandem repeats that are responsible for the transcription. So I'm going to give you to tell you how we did that. First, we took the sequences, which are in our case quite short, 50 base pairs before and after the STR, and we encoded them in that one hot encoded matrix. So that works like this to be able to put that into the model. And we used a CNN architecture. So a convolution neural network briefly is just a few layers and of a convolution for those who know what that is, and then 2 dense layers. And that's important to know that our model can be trained in both regression mode, so to be able to predict a single value, and in classification mode to be able to predict if the sequence belongs in one class or in another class. So then after having the model, we need to train it. So the train method is represented here. We take our training whole data set. For each class, we have one data set, and we separate in 50% for training, 20% for validation. So which is going to continuously train our model on the training and also continuously test on the validation. And when we see that the validation performance drops, then we are going to stop the training to avoid overfitting. Then we have a test set, which is about 40% of our data. And that test set is going to be able to model by using the Spearman correlation between what is predicted and what is observed. And how you see have quite good performance. Not have the model is good on.
Sorry, Mathis, you have some internet connection issue probably, so you are blocking. Okay, now we completely lost you.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes, now it's working. Yeah, maybe if you take out the
Laura,
camera.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you hear me back?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, okay, it should be better now.
Yeah, so try to take out the camera maybe, so that you will use less internet connection and it should not block.
Yeah, I'm on a different network now, so it should be better.
Okay, great.
Where did you lose me?
Basically, when you were in the beginning of the presentation of this slide. So you presented how the structure was, so the training and the testing and so on, and then it started blocking. So you were, sometimes we could hear you and sometimes not. Okay.
So here basically I just told that the model had a good performance on a lot of STR classes. And so with that performance, we were confident that the model had a good, were well trained, and that we had some motifs in our sequences that were responsible for predicting the transcription. And from that, we wanted to use our model to extract some information from some biological information by tweaking a little bit of the model or using it in different modes. So this is what I'm going to present after that. So the first thing that we did is that we tried to assess the importance of flanking sequences. And that's something that is important in the STR community, because in the STR community, the best characteristic or the most used characteristic is the STR length, and only the STR length. And we mostly don't care about, usually we don't really care about what is around the STR. So here we wanted to show that the flanking sequences were actually important for expression transcription. So what we did is that we took our data set, our sequences, and we replaced the STR by ends. So ends in the model, they count like nothing, it's just zeros. So the model doesn't use that part of the sequence. And then we trained the model, so without the STR, and we tested it like presented before by using Spearman correlation between what the model predicts and what is actually observed. And what we see with that is that the performance on the model built only on STR flanking sequences is actually almost as good as the model that is built on the whole sequence. That was already a good result, which showed that you have some important motifs located around the STR that are responsible for predicting transcription. Another thing that we did with the model is that we tried to assess how those flanking sequences were changing between the STRs. And did we have differences of flanking sequences between A STRs and T STRs, for example? So what we do in this case is that the same way like before, we take the STR and we replace it by 9 ends. So we completely remove the nature of the STR and the length. And then we take the downstream sequence and we also replace by ends, because a little bit of downstream sequence, because we have some alignment issues. So we could have some of the TSTR overlap with the downstream sequence that would give too much way for the model to predict the correct class, right? So what the model does is that it takes all of these sequences and it tries to differentiate if the model has a T sequence and an A sequence, that example. And we do that experiment for all of the classes of the STRs. And the results is, well, we start, the model pretty much predicts correctly for all pairs of the STR. The model is able to know the difference, notice the difference between the STR's flanking sequences. So, and instead of maybe G3Ts and G5Ts, which are very close to each other, but otherwise the model can differentiate between classes, flanking sequences. We also see some clusters appearing. So the T STRs, which are mainly composed of T, seems to be together. The A STR together also. Then you have some other classes which are also in another cluster. And that is interesting because it has been noted before that there was a striking nucleotide composition in AC STRs. And this analysis basically extends the observation to all of the STRs. So to conclude, we have shown that there exists transcription initiation at short tandem repeats, and that transcription has been validated by mean-ion sequencing. We also showed that transcription is partially predictable by CNN using the sequence as the input, so that there are important features inside the sequence of STRs that predict their transcription, and also that the flanking sequences contain important features. And now to give you a bit of an overview of what could we do with that and what could be next, we also discovered that if we looked at STRs that have ClinVar variants, so ClinVar are variants which have an impact, in pathology or in the clinic, have been noticed in the clinic. And we see that the STRs that have ClinVar variants, they tend to be much more expressed than the one who don't. We also saw that within these variants that have, within this STR that have ClinVar variants, well, the one that have pathogenic variants are the most expressed of all. And that's interesting because we have known that STRs have had regulatory functions, actually a good amount of regulatory functions. And now we see that, well, transcription STRs with ClinVar variants tend to be more expressed. And maybe there is a link between the fact that this expressed STRs with ClinVar variants lead to are more important in the clinic, and maybe that transcription at STRs could have an effect on the regulatory function of STRs. So this is what we are doing now. We are doing that in two ways. We are building models which are easier to interpret by maybe being able to find out motifs from these models. And we are also looking at those connections between regulatory functions and transcription initiation at STRs. So I would like to thank the team and also the previous members of the team that participated in this work, and also our collaborators. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for the nice talk, Mathis. We have time for one question. Anthony, great talk, Mathis. Did you extract the motifs that were important for transcription? Any specific transcription factor more specifically involved in regulation of STRs?
This is, we try to do some things with it, yes. We published some of the things in the paper, but it was really done with a model that is not really able to extract those motifs. There exist some techniques that extract motifs from any models, but we prefer to develop a simpler models where we can look at the model parameters and really extract the filters and the motifs from this way. And this is actually what we are doing now and what we plan on working on in the future.
Thank you. And then Christophe, good talk. Thanks. Any ideas of the function of STR flagging sequences? Mostly regulatory functions, splicing?
At this point, we really don't know. There has been some things about the STR in itself, where it could be implied maybe in DNA folding, or we have like maybe a large concentration of STR in between the nucleosomes. This was some conclusions that have been pointed out, but at this point we really don't know.
Okay, thank you. So there are other questions that maybe you can ask, you can answer from remote.